This story has haunted me for over 2 decades. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a joke. 9 of us heard it, 9 of us remember it, and none of us have ever ridden through those woods again. Back in the summer of 2001, I was in college, living in one of the largest cities in the country. I was 21, riding motorcycles with my closest group of friends, and we were all living what we thought were the best years of our lives. There were 9 of us in our tight-knit circle. We did everything together: classes, rides, late-night hangs, partying, and yes, love. I had just met my first real girlfriend that year. Life was carefree, wild, and simple. We were inseparable, and when one of us came up with an idea, the rest just followed, no questions asked. So when our buddy Adam suggested a boys-only weekend at his family's farm about 2 hours out of the city, the decision was unanimous. His dad owned over 200 acres of open farmland, a chicken coop, a proper old farmhouse, and even a pool. It sounded like paradise. No cell phones, no homework, just motorcycles, music, grilled meat, and beer. We left the city late Friday afternoon. All 9 of us riding in a pack, the roar of our engines echoing through the highway as we left civilization behind. Friday night was unforgettable. Barbecue, jokes, drinks, splashing in the pool, laying under the open sky with nothing but the stars and the sound of the countryside. Saturday was the same, pure bliss. For a moment it felt like time had stopped, but everything changed that night. Around 11 p.m., Adam got a call on the old farmhouse landline. It was his dad. One of their uncles had passed away that evening in a tiny town called Dry Creek, about another 2 hours away. His dad asked if Adam and if we could ride out there to help the widow. She was elderly, devastated, and completely alone. We were buzzed from the evening, but sober enough to ride. We didn't hesitate. We packed light, geared up, and hit the road around 11:30 p.m. None of us could have guessed what would happen next. We were deep in the countryside now, riding into unfamiliar territory. No streetlights, no stores. Just long stretches of tar roads interrupted by dirt tracks and the occasional wooden signpost. By 1:45 a.m., we were exhausted, cold, and utterly lost. We pulled over at a crossroads near a hollow, just trees and nothing else around. No GPS back then, just paper maps and fading memory. Then, headlights. A lone car in the distance. We flagged it down, and the driver, a local man in his 40s, pulled over and rolled down his window. Adam asked for directions to Dry Creek. The man nodded and said, "You boys are close. I can take you the rest of the way. Follow me." We thanked him, but just as he started driving, he stopped, leaned out his window and said, "If any of you smoke, light one when we hit the dirt road." We stared at him. "Why?" I asked. He looked straight at me and said with a flat, serious tone, "So the witches don't snatch you." Then he rolled up his window and drove on. We laughed nervously. "Country humor," one of my buddies said. Another said, "This guy's trying to mess with us." But as we rode on, the trees started to change. I swear on everything I love, those woods were wrong. It was summer, but the trees had no leaves, not one. Just gnarled claw-like branches reaching into the sky like 1,000 fingers. The dirt road was narrow, just wide enough for the car ahead and our bikes to snake through. And then the guy did it. He rolled down his window and lit a cigarette. Something about that moment made the hairs on my neck stand up. I looked to my left. My friend Nick was riding beside me. He smoked too. I yelled over the engines, "Light one." He laughed it off. I made him stop. I grabbed one from his pack and lit it myself. My helmet came off and I puffed as we started rolling again. Then it happened. At first, I thought it was just a breeze, but it wasn't the wind. It was laughter. A high-pitched, broken, shrill cackling echoing from above. It sounded like it came from the trees, maybe 30 feet above us. Then again, and again. 5 times total. The kind of laugh that makes your blood freeze, like something ancient, not human. I nearly dropped my cigarette. I turned to Nick. He heard it too. So did Aaron on the other side of the road. The engines got louder as we instinctively closed the distance between our bikes. Riding side by side, headlights overlapping like we were trying to merge into one body. No one said a word. We rode like that for 15 more minutes through those dead woods. The laughter followed us until it didn't. When we finally reached the town, it looked like something out of a forgotten time. A single street, a few houses, no lights on, no sound. We pulled into the driveway of a small wooden home at the edge of the trees. The man in the car gave us a quiet wave and drove off without a word. We knocked on the door. The widow answered, red-eyed and trembling. She didn't even ask who we were. She just said, "Thank you for coming," and opened the door wide. We helped her until dawn, cleaned the house, prepared food, arranged furniture for the guests expected in the morning. We didn't sleep. None of us could. The sun came up and bathed everything in gold, but not one of us felt warm. We left by late afternoon. No one spoke on the ride back to the farmhouse, not until days later. Back in the city, I couldn't let it go. I asked Adam's dad about the area. He hesitated. Then he told us the legend. Locals say a witch haunts that stretch of woods near Dry Creek. She lingers in the trees. She can't stand fire, especially smoke. Some say she was burned alive decades ago. Others say she's older than the town itself. People disappear there, men mostly. Hunters, drifters, lost souls. They say she laughs before she takes you. No one drives through that dirt road after midnight, unless they're smoking. Adam's dad said he always thought it was just old stories. We never told him we heard the laughter. We never told anyone until now. A year later, Nick quit smoking. I asked him why. He said, "Because it saved my life once." Out of the 9 of us, 3 moved away and never spoke that night again. 2 had nightmares for months. I still dream of the laughter. Sometimes I wake up in a sweat and swear I hear it again, far off like it's waiting. Some people will say we imagined it, that the late hour, the woods, the suggestion of witches, it was just our minds playing tricks. But here's the thing, 9 of us heard it, and we all remember, not 1 laugh, but 5, echoing through the trees like a warning, like a hunger. So if you ever find yourself deep in the country, riding a dirt road at 2 a.m. and someone tells you to light a cigarette, don't laugh, just do it. Because some things in this world are real, and they're watching. He didn't run after me like a madman. He didn't scream. He just followed steadily, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew exactly how it would end. They say you shouldn't make your life too predictable, that routines, especially quiet ones, can become traps. That's what I think about now whenever I walk to work alone before the sun comes up. Because one winter morning at exactly 3:45 a.m., my routine nearly got me killed. And I don't mean that figuratively. It was a regular weekday. My alarm rang at 3:45 a.m. like always. Shower, brush, get dressed, lace my boots, black jacket on, scarf tucked. The world outside was asleep, locked in silence. I left my apartment complex at 4 a.m. sharp, still dark, still quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your ears. It was winter, but not freezing, Luke cold, if that makes sense. Just cold enough to make you walk a little faster. My workplace is about 3 kilometers away, a 30-minute walk if I don't stop. The path is always the same, past the convenience store through a sparsely wooded area, then up a long, steady hill before cutting through a thick forest road that eventually opens to the back lot of the office building. I've walked it 100 times, 1,000 maybe. That walk used to feel like mine, like no one else knew about it, but I don't feel that way anymore. I passed the glowing windows of the 24-hour convenience store. Nothing strange, just an old man inside scratching a lottery ticket. A few minutes later, I reached the start of the wooded area, mostly bare trees, the kind that look skeletal in winter. That's when I saw something in the middle of the path ahead. My heart skipped. It looked like a large cat at first, standing completely still, its eyes glinted in the dark. But as I took a step closer, I realized it was just a fox. Its tail twitched, and after a few seconds, it darted off into the trees. Wildlife is common around here, so I didn't think much of it. Still, my breathing was a little shaky, a leftover adrenaline jolt. I took a moment, exhaled, and kept walking. 4 minutes later, I started my climb up the long hill. No streetlights here, just darkness and the crunch of frozen gravel under my boots. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought I was imagining it, a shadow moving on the far side of the road. But as I kept walking, I saw the shape become clearer. A man, a human silhouette, walking on the main road instead of the sidewalk, going in the opposite direction. No flashlight, no reflective gear, just walking in the dark. I slowed down a little. People don't walk around here at this hour. It's rare, especially alone, especially in complete darkness. As we closed the distance between us, maybe 25 meters, he stopped, and he looked right at me. He didn't move, just stood there, locking eyes with me. Then, slowly and methodically, he pulled his hood over his head. Next, fingerless gloves. Then a scarf, which he wrapped around the lower half of his face like he was preparing for something. My stomach knotted. Something about how deliberate it all was. Still, I told myself I was overreacting. It's windy. It's cold. Maybe he's just out for a walk. Maybe he's going to work too, right? But I didn't move forward. I just stood there, watching him. And then he stepped off the road, from his side to mine. There was no reason for it, no logical reason. The sidewalk on his side was clear, flat, and better lit from the distant traffic lights. He crossed the entire road without breaking eye contact. Now he was on my side, still walking toward me. Slowly, calmly. My heart started racing. My breath came out in short white clouds. I froze. He kept walking and walking. And when he was no more than 3 feet from me, that primitive switch in my body flipped, the one that doesn't care about logic. Flight. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My feet pounded the sidewalk, my lungs burning instantly from the cold. I don't think I've ever run that fast in my life. The incline of the hill worked against me, but fear is a hell of a fuel. Behind me, I heard the sound of someone running too. Not sprinting, jogging, just enough to keep pace, not calling out, not trying to catch up, just following. When I finally reached the top of the hill, I turned around. He was still there, still jogging. When he saw me looking, he slowed to a stop. Then, still watching me, he took off his scarf, pulled off his gloves, let his hood drop, and turned around and walked away. I didn't stop to breathe. I didn't care if my legs gave out. I ran the rest of the way, heart in my throat, eyes darting toward every shadow in the woods. The forest always gave me a weird feeling, but that day, it felt like it was hiding things, like it wanted to hide things. I reached work, shaking, drenched in sweat. My coworkers knew something was wrong the moment they saw me. I told them everything. One of my coworkers, who had driven in earlier than me that day, said something that made my skin crawl. He said he saw a man walking alone on the road about 10 minutes before I arrived. He thought it was strange, too. He said the guy was walking slow, as if he didn't know where he was going or didn't care, just wandering in the middle of the road in pitch black. But what chilled me was how he described him. Black hoodie, gloves, no flashlight. It was him. For days after, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. When he crossed the road, when he came closer, when I froze. What if I hadn't run? What was he preparing for when he suited up? Why did he follow me? Why stop when I looked back? He didn't say a word, didn't ask for money. He didn't seem drunk or lost. He waited and he watched. He had that same look predators have. Not angry, not wild, just patient, calculating, like he'd done this before. I didn't take that path for a while after. I started getting rides or taking a longer route that stuck closer to neighborhoods. But one day, a few weeks later, I saw something that still haunts me. It was posted in the back room at work, some internal newsletter pinned on the board. Nothing official, just a staff notice. It said there had been multiple reports of early morning walkers in the area being followed. No one had been attacked. But several people described a man who matched my description exactly, down to the gloves and scarf. In one case, a woman said she felt someone watching her from the trees as she walked. Another said the man crossed the road to her side and walked directly behind her for 10 minutes without saying a word. She said she heard him muttering to himself, low, repetitive, like a chant. But when she turned to confront him, he disappeared into the forest, just vanished. To this day, I have no idea who he was. Maybe just a drifter. Maybe someone mentally ill. Maybe a predator looking for the right moment, the right person, the right opening. And maybe he didn't follow through with anything because I ran. But sometimes late at night, when I think about the way he looked at me, no emotion, no confusion, I wonder if I was supposed to be his first, or if I was almost his next. Because here's what chills me more than anything else. If I hadn't seen him at the top of the hill, if I had kept running and not turned around, I don't think he would have stopped. I think he would have followed me right into the forest. And I don't think anyone would have ever seen me again. Always trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. We go through life thinking we're in control of our routines, but out there, in the silence, in the dark, There are people watching, waiting, looking for someone who doesn't run. So if you ever find yourself walking alone and someone crosses the road just to get closer, don't wait. Run. Because monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they walk right up to you, wearing a scarf and gloves. This happened to me when I was just 11 years old, and it still haunts me to this day. I've lived in multiple haunted houses. I've heard footsteps when no one was home. I've seen shadows moving where there shouldn't be any, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the day I saw a face that didn't belong to anyone living. This story isn't fiction. It's a memory burned into my brain like a brand, and it all happened in the middle of the day, in a quiet backyard in rural Missouri, where something not human was waiting just outside the window. We'd only been living in Missouri for a few months when it happened. My family moved from California to a small town tucked in the backwoods of the state, where neighbors waved from porches, dogs barked at nothing, and everyone swore they'd felt something weird at one point or another. I thought they were just trying to scare the new kid. But they weren't. Our new house was beautiful but old. It sat on nearly an acre of land with woods creeping right up behind the backyard. The house had that faint, musty smell of something that had seen things. You know that smell? Not just old wood or mildew, but something else, something colder. My parents did what they could to make the place feel like home. My dad built me a 2-story wooden clubhouse just behind the house. It had an upper and lower deck, wooden shutters on all sides, and little details that made it feel like a real little home. It was supposed to be my escape, but I didn't know I'd be trying to escape from it instead. Jillian lived next door, just across a small grassy lot that separated our homes. We became instant best friends. Same age, same weird sense of humor, and just enough mischief to keep things interesting. We spent most of that summer inside my clubhouse, swapping ghost stories and playing on our 3DSs. We'd sit in the lower deck with the shutters propped open, letting the breeze and sun spill in. That day, the day it happened, started out like any other. It was a little past 2 p.m. The sun was high and the sound of cicadas filled the air like static. Jillian and I were inside the lower deck of the clubhouse, each glued to our own screens. I think we were playing Animal Crossing or something like that. Occasionally we'd laugh or talk trash, but mostly we're just enjoying the peaceful silence. At some point, Jillian said, "Hey, I forgot to feed my cats. I'll be back in like 5 minutes." I didn't even look up. "Okay," I said. "I'll be here." She left through the front door of the clubhouse and I was alone. Exactly 3 minutes later, because I remember checking the little clock on my 3DS, I heard the wooden shutters to my right slam open from the outside. It startled me. I thought maybe Jillian was trying to scare me. I looked over and there she was. Or at least it looked like her. Standing right outside the open window, staring in, but something was off. Her face was gray, not pale, gray, like dead skin gray, ashy and dry. Her lips looked bluish, cracked, and the look in her eyes, there was no sparkle, just a dull, flat stare, and she wouldn't speak. I squinted. "Jillian, what the hell are you doing?" No response, just that dead-eyed stare. Then, just as suddenly, she slammed the shutters closed. I flinched. My stomach dropped. Through the thin slits in the wood, I saw her, or whatever it was, dart around the side of the clubhouse. I waited a moment, expecting her to come through the front door, laughing or yelling, "Gotcha!" But nothing. Dead silence. I stood up, slowly, and peeked outside. She was nowhere. I stepped out and looked toward her house, and that's when my blood went cold. I saw her. The real her. Jillian had just now stepped out of her back door, holding a bag of cat food, brushing her hair out of her face. She looked normal, alive, healthy, no gray skin, no empty eyes. She hadn't come back yet. I looked back at the clubhouse, then at her, then back again, and I couldn't breathe. Later that day, I told Jillian what happened. She laughed at first, but when she saw how serious I was, her face changed. I've seen things too," she said quietly. "At my house. I just never told anyone." We sat in her room for the rest of the day, trying to shake it off. But every creak in her house made us jump. Every shadow in the hallway looked wrong. I avoided my clubhouse for weeks after that. But the story doesn't end there. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. It was late September. The air had started to cool, and the leaves were just beginning to turn. I decided to go back into the clubhouse one afternoon. Alone. Stupid, I know. Everything looked normal at first. A little dusty, cobwebs in the corners. The shutters were still latched shut. I sat down on the little bench inside the lower deck, trying to convince myself I was just seeing things that day, that it was some weird play of light, maybe even a dream. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. From behind the shutters again, slow, deliberate, like fingernails. I froze. Then the latch began to jiggle. Click, click, click. Not violently, not fast, just patiently, like it knew I was inside. I didn't move. I held my breath until my chest burned, then silence. For a moment, I thought maybe it had stopped, until I heard something worse. The whisper. Right behind me. Too close. It said my name. Not screamed, not whispered harshly, just calm, sweet almost, like someone pretending to be familiar. I turned, slowly. Nothing. But the upper deck ladder creaked. I knew I shouldn't go up. Every part of my body told me not to. But I did, one hand on the wooden railing, 1 foot at a time. The upper deck was brighter, more open. I looked around, empty, except there was something scratched into the floorboards. I got on my hands and knees and looked closer. One word, mine. Scratched deep into the wood, over and over again, dozens of times. I don't know how I never noticed it before. That night, I asked my mom about the property. She hesitated, then told me something that still gives me chills. A girl had died there. Not recently. Years ago, in the 70s. She was 11. Her parents found her in the woods behind the house. No injuries, no wounds. Just dead. Eyes wide open. Gray skin. They never figured out what killed her. She had a small playhouse in the yard back then, too. It had long since rotted away. Ours was built in almost the exact same spot. I never went back in the clubhouse again, but a few weeks before we moved out, I walked past it one last time, just to look. The shutters were swinging slightly in the wind. I never left them unlatched, and on the inside of the glass, drawn in dust, was a handprint, small, child-sized, pressed right up against the glass. I've had other experiences since then, but that moment, seeing that gray, lifeless version of my best friend staring in at me, will always be the most terrifying. I don't know what it was. A spirit? A mimic? A shadow of the girl who died there years ago? All I know is this, whatever it was, it wanted me to see it. And it wanted me to come back.